So we're going to spend the next several hours talking about writing effective monitoring visit reports. I am an auditor, so I come at this from I worked at a site and then went into auditing. So I've had an opportunity to read and experience these auditing reports or monitoring reports. And we're going to talk about them in terms of the structure, what we would expect to see, how we make sure that we're incorporating what we should be incorporating, and really conveying our message. One of the biggest concerns that we see from the FDA's perspective is that they will go out and look at monitoring and read the monitoring visit reports and then find that the monitors found issues, identified issues, which is really the easy part, but failed to appreciate the significance of those issues or to structure those reports in a way that it communicated it to the individuals who are in a position to actually act upon it. So we're going to talk about the way that we can address these in how we communicate. So we're going to look at the impact of poor report writing. Of course, we can guess what that is. Look at the definitions and concepts of scientific report writing. Talk about 10 rules of quality report writing for monitors. Look at those 10 rules, and we'll talk about action items, deviations, queries, how we would write those so that we're conveying the importance of those and the expectations, really. And when I audit, I talk to investigators about communication. Has the monitor communicated with them? And oftentimes they'll say, well, they told me everything was fine. So we're going to talk about not just your monitoring visit reports, but the information that you communicate to the site as well. We'll talk about essential document mapping within a monitoring report so that you have a reference point. And we'll also look at the challenges of writing those reports and getting those reports reviewed. So as I mentioned, as an auditor, we have an opportunity to read multiple monitoring visit reports. We see what goes to the site and how the site assesses that information. And we also get an opportunity to look within the monitoring visit report process in terms of not just how quickly did the monitor get the report written after the visit, but how quickly was it reviewed and acted upon. So one of the concerns that we have, as we mentioned, is how we are monitoring. And certainly the monitoring report is critical, but we have to think about how we get there. So we have a lot of sponsors that say that they go and co-monitor. So they're going out with their vendor, but many of those folks that are going out also don't have monitoring experience. So what are you doing when you get there? How are you assessing what's happening? Because co-monitoring is really to see, hey, how well are you doing? But you kind of have to know what, right, how best, absolutely. Okay, so we'll talk about that too. How do we review that? What are we looking for? And I can't stress enough that, certainly from a monitoring or an auditing perspective and a regulatory perspective, we're looking at not just did you look at it for time, but did you do it in a way that allowed the monitor to address issues that were identified? So I did a series of audits for a sponsor several years ago, and I was I went and audited their CRO, and then I went and audited multiple sites to get a sense of how this CRO was handling monitoring activities. And they had an electronic system, which was great for an auditor because you can track things and look at that audit trail. But the monitors were uniformly, for the most part, on point for getting their reports in on time. So the SOP and the monitoring plan was that you had to submit that report within 5 days of the visit. So monitors were getting those in, but there was nothing in the monitoring plan or in the SOPs for how long it took to review those. And so I put together a table and compared it to what we were seeing at those sites and was able to show that the furthest out was 15 months after that visit. The report was finally reviewed. So you could see in the system where it came in, where it was acknowledged, then where it was deferred, then where it was passed over to someone else to review. So the CRO was really looking at reviewing reports as a formality, checking that box. They were not doing an in-depth review, and it really depended upon who the reviewer was. Some of them were very in-depth, but Unfortunately, that was one of the ones that was 15 months out. So I remember particularly this one where the reviewer had really good feedback. And this was the first monitoring visit. And the feedback was, okay, here are the things I want you to focus on because this is a lot of findings for a first subject in. Make sure all subjects going forward have this done. Let's look at this, let's do that, etc. But feedback was good, but they didn't get it for 15 months. So the timeline was off. It was not useful. But we also see folks that just inventory. Yes, I got that in. And I will question that. You signed this on the same day? What's your review process? In my personal opinion, and you can differ with me if you'd like, but as an auditor, my personal opinion is that I'm concerned that we're sending out, and it's almost uniformly an SOP or a monitoring plan. In the monitoring plans, we send out follow-up letters to the sites before we review and approve the monitoring visit report. And I'm not sure what the purpose of that is because people get their monitoring follow-up letters out, but you haven't finalized your report yet. Another disconnect that we have and we'll talk about is making sure we're sharing information that's meaningful. So when we don't write our reports correctly, we are not giving the end user the insight that we have to the site.